Welcome to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters, where we talk about historical drama series and films as windows to the past and mirrors of the present. I'm Michon Boston.
And I'm Taquiena Boston. Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice is often the gateway for many Austen fans. Pride and Prejudice introduce readers to Regency-era English country society, norms, romances, and the strategies for making a financially advantageous marriage. Its timeless themes make Jane Austen's novel a romantic template in our times for the frictions that come with preconceived notions about intentions and perceptions. The film and series adaptations of Pride and Prejudice continue to feed the growing popularity of this English author as we celebrate her 250th birthday in 2025.
In this episode of Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters, Taquiena and I continue our conversation about Regency clothes with costume historian and curator Alden O'Brien by taking a dive into the costumes and adaptations of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, from the 1995 Arts and Entertainment series to the 2005 feature film and the upcoming Netflix adaptation, which we're excited to discuss, based on a first-look photo that was released. We explore how costumes bring to life on screen iconic characters like Elizabeth Bennet, Mr. Darcy, and more in these adaptations. And even Emma, possibly Austen's most stylish heroine, gets some shine.
As we wrap up 2025, we're bringing you not one, but three special podcasts as part of what we call the Jane Austen Adapted miniseries for Jane Austen's 250th birthday. The three podcasts draw from our experiences at the 2025 Jane Austen Society of North America, or JASNA, annual general meeting held in Baltimore, Maryland in October. Having followed the amazing work of the Jane Austen Society of North America and inspired by adaptations of Jane Austen's novels, Michon and I finally took the plunge this year and became JASNA members. And we are loving it.
Our guest for this podcast is Alden O'Brien, curator of costume and textiles at the DAR, that's Daughters of the American Revolution Museum in Washington, D.C. Alden earned her bachelor's in art history from Barnard College and a master's in museum studies focused on costume and textiles from the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City. After a year with the First Ladies collection at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, Alden found her home at the DAR Museum, curating its remarkable costume collection. Alden has curated DAR Museum exhibitions on costume, quilts, childhood toys, and needlework, and collaborated on many more. She plans to retire in January 2026 to delve into her own research projects that center around the Regency and Federal eras, as well as, of course, Jane Austen. I think a lot of people probably are introduced to Jane Austen through Pride and Prejudice.
Right.
So what we're going to do is look at...
It's the gateway drug.
It's the gateway, yes. But it appears that Pride and Prejudice gets a new adaptation for a new generation. Each generation has their own Pride and Prejudice. So let's talk about three adaptations. I know there have been more. And by the way, the one we're not mentioning, but I will make a note of it, the 1980 BBC version was my gateway.
My gateway, too, yeah. The first one since the 1941, and it was delightful. Yes,
Yeah, it
and
was.
it holds up quite well.
Yes,
it's
it
our
does.
mother's favorite, actually.
I think our first is going to be our favorite to a certain extent. I look at it now and I go, wow, those are really 80s bangs, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, first love, first Pride and Prejudice.
yeah. Soft spot.
So let's start with the favorite, the 1995 A&E Arts and Entertainment series that was adapted by Andrew Davies. I mean, his writing. What does this tell you about the time the story is taking place? What would you identify as historically accurate in terms of the costumes, or what are creative liberties that the production took? to make it
Um,
work for this
right,
audience?
right. Well, first of all, I also want to just sort of make a little statement here. I am not here to be the costume police or the accuracy police. Okay. I come to this field partly through theater and theater costuming. So I know and I need to remind people that even though I love a really great, thing that shows their knowledge of and love of the period, and I'm here to sort of point out, oh, here's where they did something inaccurate. I'm not just finger pointing to say, gotcha, gotcha. Why did they do that? Theater productions, film productions, TV productions, they all have a timeline, they have a budget. They can't get the same exact fabrics they had back in the time period. And possibly most importantly, the director and the designer have a point of view about what they want things to look like, and what the tone is, and what their point of view and approach is. And so they're going to make choices both within accuracy and outside of accuracy. They're going to take liberties, they're going to take shortcuts, and they're going to make some decisions just to make a point about a character, or to or about what they're trying to do. And all of that is fine. So when I'm saying, "Oh, this isn't accurate," it's not just about whether it's accurate. It's, was that done for a reason? Was it done with knowledge of the period? Did the person make that as a conscious choice, or was it just lazy? And what was the reason for it? And was that a good reason, and does it work? There are some inaccurate things that I'll get to in a minute that drive me up the wall, that I do not think need to be done, and that kind of insult the viewer's intelligence. And there are other things where I go, okay, so that it's part of that. They wear fascinators instead of bonnets in Bridgerton. It's an alternate universe. We don't want the bonnet look. It works. It's fine. Let's have fun with it. So I am not here to just point fingers and say, me, I know more than you do. I'm here, but you've invited me because I know about costumes. So I'm here to tell you some things, just to let people know, here's where it falls on the accuracy scale. And if it works for you, great. I'm not here to rain on anyone's parade. So I just needed to get that out of the way.
Mhm. Good,
So
good.
Pride and Prejudice 1995, I also love. I also love the 2005 version for many reasons, which don't include all the costumes. But anyway, 1995 did a beautiful job. Of course, they had the luxury of having 6 episodes. They can really get into so many of the details of the scenes and so on. And I was just rereading my copy of The Making of Pride and Prejudice, which was a book that they put out because it was so popular that everyone wanted to know all the behind the scenes stuff. And if you think back to 1995, nobody had done a Regency period Jane Austen since 1980.
Mhm.
And it wasn't a period where people were doing a lot of historical dramas. We weren't doing a whole lot of historical dramas generally. I mean, masterpiece theater, okay, but they're all over the map. It's like a little Tudor here, a lot of Dickens there. There were no Regency period things to be rented and borrowed at that point. So they had to start from scratch. And this was before the internet. They couldn't just Google Regency fashions. They couldn't go to the Metropolitan Museum or the Victoria and Albert Museum websites and scroll through all the pictures of fashion plates and garments from the period and portraits from the period. They had to go and try to get, appointments in a few museums to see a few things if they possibly could. And they had something like 8 weeks to put together all those costumes. And you can't just go to Joanne Fabrics. Well, you can't go to Joanne Fabrics because it doesn't exist anymore. But you can't just go to the fabric store, or Peter Lewis or whoever in London, or Liberty, and say, okay, I need some little teeny tiny Indian inspired, early roller printed style 1810 printed cottons. Now, in 1880, I think they did go to Liberty of London, actually, because a lot of those little printed cottons look a lot like the little smocked church dresses from Liberty that I used to wear. And it works well enough, but I do kind of go, oh, Jane's wearing that Liberty print again. close as they can get. Good for them. They managed it. But what the designers ended up doing was hand printing, silk screening rather than roller printing or block printing, but silk screening designs that they got from some of the museum garments they were able to see. They couldn't even put them in the wash. I'm sure it smelled after 6 months of filming but they got a really great period look for all of those beautiful period prints because they produced it themselves. Now, today, you could just do that by digitally printing things. Go to Spoonflower, or you've got your own digital printer, available various places. But I think that's the core of what makes it so successful, because they really did make the effort to get the right weight of cotton and the right kind of print. Because it has the right look. And they did the right corsetry, so the bust is up where it should be. And they have their hair up. This is my chief peeve. Their hair had to be up if they are adults and they are not just at home, Lizzie and Jane chatting about the ball as they're getting ready for bed. Their hair is down. Any other time, their hair is up. That is the mores of the period. Respect the mores of the period. Don't get me started on some of these other places. But anyway, so they did a beautiful job with that. The wigs, now you look at it, you kind of go, yeah, that really is a wig. Or it's like, Colin, I love you, but you got a little too much hair. Yeah, it does it gets the right look pretty well for the disheveled Regency dandy look, but there's a little too much hair. So there are a few things that I remember thinking in 1995, this looks so perfect, but I bet in 20 years I won't think that anymore.
Ah.
Yeah. Now that you bring Colin's hair up, I'm seeing maybe it was a little too Heathcliff.
It's a little Heathcliff, yeah.
Yeah.
But, it's okay.
Wuthering Heights people.
It's not egregious. It's not like there were a whole bunch of 1970s Masterpiece Theater television productions of Jane Austen novels, which are hard to watch because, first of all, the pacing's really slow. Secondly, the cinematography is very much, as if you're watching a play on stage almost. And so they aren't, they don't have the close-ups and they don't have the quick editing. So it's very slow. The costumes are not too bad, but oh my God, they could not resist. They're from like 1970 to 72. They could not resist a little beehive action. They couldn't resist putting some lift on that hair because, we're looking at people's faces and the makeup is often a giveaway too, the makeup on these Jane Austen things, you mostly I can't think of anything that really strikes me as, oh my God, why is she wearing that eyeshadow? They're pretty darn good about that. And the hair, for the most part, I think really does hold up. In 1995, we had Sense and Sensibility, Pride and Prejudice, 2 Emmas, Mansfield Park.
Yes, that was the year.
It was a hell of a year, and all of them did a really, really good job on costume. The Emma with Gwyneth Paltrow took a few more liberties, but it still looks pretty good. I mean, I keep wanting to say, Gwyneth, put on a bonnet. You're outside. You're going to get a sunburn, for God's sake, woman. And Frank Churchill really needed a haircut. And he comes back from London, he still hasn't had enough of a haircut. But anyway, whatever. All of those 1995 things do a really, really good job.
Things started winding up again in 2005 through 2007 with a lot of films. And one that seems to be very special to a lot of fans is the 2005 adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, which is set in the year that she wrote it, 1797, as you mentioned during the tour at DAR to us. It's our understanding, and we may be wrong, but we'll say it. Supposedly, the director, Joe Wright, didn't want a film with Regency attire or Georgian period.
Well, it was more Georgian period than
You wanted more
what we
Georgia.
associated with Regency.
Well, it's pretty close to the Regency, though, because the waists are fairly high. They made a big dramatic contrast between the Bennets and everybody versus the Londoners had much higher waists and much lower necklines. So you definitely got the point. This is city mouse versus country mouse. I think it was a little bit exaggerated, but I'll get into that later. But I also read an interview where he said that he had been reading about the period and that in the social history aspect of it that I really admired his going for, that he said this was a period where you were kind of in transition between the period of the 18th century when the parents had a much bigger say in who you married. You know, you
Mm.
over the course of the century, and of course it will vary from class to class and family to family, but over the course of the century, you're going from um, having the parents more or less, choose someone for you. And if they love you enough and you really say, oh my God, please, can I not marry Chad? They'll say, okay, I love you. We'll find someone other than Chad. To a period where by the end of the century, when Jane Austen is writing, the children are almost always choosing, and the parents may have veto power to a certain extent. Because of course, there's all these legal things of, am I going to settle money on you? Am I going to approve of it? Am I going to give my consent if you're underage and so on? But he was kind of struck by that, and he wanted to go for that slightly earlier period where it's still kind of in transition about, and Mrs. Bennet is saying, no, you have to marry Mr. Collins. And Mr. Bennet says, no, she doesn't. And so he wanted to make that difference as well. So that's very subtle. And I think unless you happen to have read that interview, you don't really know that. But I find it very interesting and admirable that he was doing that background historical research to have that in his mind. I also suspect that since he was coming along only 10 years after the iconic 1995 version, he wanted it to look different.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so that was fine. He also wanted it to look less perfect and pristine. I mean, if you look at the Pride and Prejudice of 95, it's always sunny and everything's beautiful in pastels and it's all um, cheerful and pretty and so on. And his version has been called the muddy hem version.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I have mixed feelings about it. I love the 2005 version and I will defend it in a lot of ways. For one thing, that pig is not indoors, but that's another story. Um, that pig is going through a passage, a covered passage between the main house and an outbuilding. Look again, it's not a floor that is indoors. Anyway, the pig is
Mm.
fine. So I have a thing about the pig because everyone says, "Oh my God, the pig is indoors. They wouldn't have had the pig indoors." No, they wouldn't, and they didn't. So anyway, muddy head version, but the must hair version, like, yeah, you brush your hair and you put it together. They don't have a lot of maids. They don't have a maid to do all of their hair. And by the afternoon, it probably was looking a little bit frowsy. Now, I do think all the men should have shaved and been shaven for the assembly room ball. I think that was going a little too far. It's still a ball. It's still a thing, a big, a nice event in your community. I think they overdid the contrast between that and Netherfield. I think they overdid the contrast between the older and younger generation. So when Mrs. Gardiner comes from London, she's wearing a caraco jacket that went out of style around 1785. I mean, why? She's not going to be 12 years out of date. She's the London aunt. Just because she's the older generation, she may be 40. She's not that old. So she may be a little bit more conservative than the younger generation. You certainly see, the older generation not going quite as far and as drastically rapidly in these very new fashions, but she would not be 12 years out of date. However, on the other hand, designers are trying to make these cues for a visually not unaware audience. Okay, so I'm picking up, that's a caraco. That's 12 years. That's been out of style for 12 years. Not everyone knows that. Nobody knows that's a caraco. Nobody knows it went out of style 12 years ago. They just know it looks different. And so if they're even thinking the least bit consciously, they're just thinking, oh, okay, the older people are wearing something a little bit different from the younger people. So they have to kind of hit the audience over the head with these differences to get their points across about the differences in age or class or London versus the countryside. So it kind of irks me that they go so over the top, but I do kind of get it. On the other hand, I still think they dress those Bennett girls too drab. Why are they all in gray and brown? They still had access to the exact same fabrics. They couldn't afford all the same fancy fabrics, but they could have been wearing nice printed cottons and muslins, even to the ball and so on. And they certainly do dress up for the ball a little bit, but and back in 1995, those girls have too many clothes. I mean, not all of them. You see them wearing the same clothes again and again. But Lizzie Bennet must have, I think I counted one time, I think she has 6 Spencers. And okay, it's over the course of a year and a half or something. So maybe she got a new Spencer the following year. She should not have 6 Spencers. That's just too much. And then they have these beautiful evening cloaks that they wear to the ball. No, people of their class would have worn their red cloak. And we have in this wonderful book called Mrs. Hurst Dancing, a series of watercolors of life in a small village, small town, England in exactly this period. And someone of exactly Jane Austen's class and living in one of those counties very close to London. And there's a picture of them all traipsing down the lane to go to a neighbor's house for a dinner party or a dance. And the girls are all wearing their red cloaks. And the man is actually carrying a lantern, unlit lantern in one hand, because he's going to need the lantern to get everybody home at night when they come home. And he's got his evening shoes sticking out of his coat pocket because he's going to change from his walking boots to his indoor clothes once he gets there. So, for the Bennett girls to have an evening cloak, when else are they going to wear that? They're not wearing it to the assembly rooms. So, the 1995 had a little bit too much in that direction. The 2005 had the Bennett girls looking way too drab and unfashionable. And apparently Keira Knightley was very self-conscious about her body and didn't like the idea of a close-fitting bodice of the period. So she has the right corset on, but then all of her dresses just hang on her, which has just the wrong look for the period. So that kind of bothers me. But again, you have all of these different accommodations for, actors' preferences and all of these other things. And they wanted that sort of muddy hem look. And in my opinion, it went too far. But I forgive a lot of it because I see where they were going with it. So this is what I mean about why were they deviating from accuracy? Was there a point they were trying to make? Is it a valid point and does it succeed? And I think all the answers to that is yes, there were good reasons. It does make sense. It bothers me because I have a very finely tuned eye for it, but I can let it go.
Yeah, I call that the very rustic Pride and Prejudice,
Yes.
that so rustic that you almost feel like you can smell the farmyard.
That's right. That's right. But, I think that that's kind of cool to point out this
Yeah.
is a working farm. And he says, I can't let Jane have the horse because I need him in the fields.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it's a reminder that this is a working farm. That's one of the ways they make their money to support all these bonnets and evening cloaks.
And I did enjoy the 2005 on viewing it more recently.
Mm-hmm.
More than when I saw it in the theater. I really, really liked it.
Interesting. Yeah. It's
and
funny when you haven't seen it in a while and you go back to it, it either grows on you or it doesn't.
yeah,
Some things grow on me and some things diminish on me.
yeah. You've been enjoying Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters, a podcast where we talk about historical drama films and series as windows to the past and mirrors of the present.
Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Share the excitement with your friends. Visit MichonBostonGroup.com/Boston Sisters. Join the historical drama community by signing up for our e-newsletter so you'll never miss an update, future episodes, or exclusive bonus content.
Now, back to our fascinating conversation.
We've got another one coming up, care of Netflix. This is their, I guess, second Jane Austen adaptation. It will be
Mhm,
Pride and Prejudice coming in we're anticipating is coming in 2026.
mhm,
But we do have a first look photo that was released, and we sent that to you.
mhm. I think in terms of construction and style, it's looking pretty good, and I went looking online and I found a couple more pictures. I think they've got the look of the period pretty nicely. It's a picture of all the Bennet girls, I guess, all in a row walking through the
Yeah.
field on their way back from Meryton, probably,
Yeah,
um,
with their mom, I believe.
with their mom.
Yeah.
And what I like about it is everybody's got a police, but, everyone's got a slightly different look, which would make sense because, I want this kind of collar, I want this kind of sleeve. The girl who's second to the left has some of those more puffy, slightly, getting into the puffy upper sleeve look. I think that's Lizzie in the dark red dress all the way to the left. She's got
Mhm.
more of the menswear lapel, which, kind of works for her. I don't know if that's Mary or who in the middle with the sort of ruffled cloak and the beret kind of effect, but she's chosen a very different look. I sometimes think, poor old Mary, I wonder how much of all of her moralizing and everything is really sincere or whether she's just like the middle of five has to carve out an identity in some way. So
Yeah.
if she's wearing, a very different style of outerwear and bonnet, that makes sense that she's just trying to carve out something for herself. And everybody's got a slightly different collar and treatment, and so on, which is what they would have worked out with their dressmaker, because they don't all want to look completely cookie cutter. Once again, though, I will say it looks like they put a sepia filter or a dull filter. It's like, why? It's oldie-timey. They didn't have color back then. I'm sorry. Yes, they did. It just looks as if they're trying to make it look kind of colorless, and I think that's sort of sad. I see this not only in, so many movies and TV adaptations for the Middle Ages, for any period, and for the Victorian period, it's like, "Oh, they didn't have color back then." Oh my god, yes, they bloody did, and I think it's kind of doing the period a disservice, and also it's much less fun. I mean, show me the color. But the whole thing looks as if it's got a filter on it to make it look, kind of brown and subdued, and I think that's kind of unfortunate. But, they've got the Regency look looking pretty good. It looks as if everybody's wearing corsets, so I'm pretty happy, and their hair is up.
And their hair is up.
I think it is interesting to think about how Mary does carve out an identity for herself. And in a sense, I mean, we talked to Jill Hornby about why Mrs. Bennet was right to be very anxious about these girls marrying because
Yes,
they couldn't have even become governnesses. They're not educated. None of
right,
them seem to have any particular talent. They couldn't teach anybody drawing or music or
absolutely.
whatever. And Mary's the one who's reading and trying to cultivate, I guess, the life of the mind and also develop
Yes,
her musical talents or lack thereof. So, it's just interesting when you
absolutely.
really understand the context of the period. It makes you see why people were behaving the way they were behaving when you
That's right.
understand their time.
And I love the line in the 2005 where Mrs. Bennet, Keira Knightley. One of the things I love is, first of all those actors. And anytime I'm complaining about all these visuals, this is
Mhm.
no reflection on the script or the performances, because I think there are many wonderful performances, even if I don't like what they're wearing. So this is not dissing the actors.
Right,
Um,
yeah.
but there's a wonderful thing where, Keira Knightley, Lizzie, is, teasing her mother about, "Oh, mother, all you ever think about is who we're going to marry." And she says, "Well, sweetie, you try having 5 daughters and unspoken and, a father whose estate is entailed and can't leave any of it to you except about 100 a year. You tell me how much time that's gonna take up, how much mental space that's gonna take, because I'm worried about what's gonna happen to you all." And I
Right,
love
yeah.
that they have that little moment to point that out. And I love that you get a sense that even though, yes, we can roll our eyes at Mrs. Bennet a little bit, I love Brenda Blethyn's, portrayal of, well, I love the portrayal of Bennett's marriage where it's much
Yeah.
less contemptuous of each other.
Yes.
But also I love her portrayal that, okay, she's a little silly, but yeah, she does have a reason to worry about them. And maybe Lizzie is being a little bit too sassy and sure of herself. And maybe she's, still a little bit in the throes of, oh, I'm so embarrassed by my mother. I mean, okay, there are reasons to be embarrassed by Mrs. Bennet, but I love that they make it a little bit more nuanced.
Yeah.
And yes, that is what's going on with all of these Jane Austen novels. And so, you know, my overarching mild criticism of these adaptations is it leans so far into the rom-com thing of, oh, it's, there she's going to get her Bingley, she's going to get her Darcy, she's going to get her, whoever. Um, but there's so much social commentary that Jane Austen is trying to make. And I think why we love her is that we have these heroines who are seizing agency and demanding that they are going to carve out a life that they will be happy with. And against all odds, sometimes they are going to get the person whom they deserve and who deserves them. And that's why I think we keep coming back to these again and again. But Jane Austen's got a lot more to say, and maybe we don't lean into it because it just isn't as true anymore. Um, Although, we're sliding back in terms of women's rights all over the place and position in society among certain groups, but we don't have to fight for the right to choose who we marry most of the time. We don't have to say, "Oh my God, women have no other career opportunities other than marriage, so they've got to get this right."
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but they don't sort of make that clear that that's what's at stake in this period, that Mr. Bennet does not have money to leave them other than an incredible pittance, and so they have to figure something out. He can't leave them the
Absolutely.
house, he can't leave them the farm, he doesn't have his own money. Same thing with the Dashwoods in Sense and Sensibility. He has to leave all that to, it's all entailed, it's not his. He can only give them a very small amount. They've gotta figure something out.
Well, we've talked a lot about different Austen adaptations. Is there an Austen adaptation that's a particular favorite of yours?
Well, first of all, I do love all the 1995 ones because I think they just really nailed it visually and with the scripts in many, many ways. So I really do have a fondness for all of those. I do actually like the 2005 one in a lot of ways, as I say, and except that, I like the costumes least of that production, but I like a lot about that production. Um, but, oh my gosh, if I were going to talk about another one, I well, first of all, I love a couple of the modern adaptations. I mean, Clueless and Bride and
Yeah.
Prejudice are perfect.
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
great transpositions of, the class and the stuff and the snobbery and the misunderstandings across, across subcultures and whatever. But I also absolutely love the 2020 Emma. I just think it's an absolute hymn to the Regency and to the costume. The visuals are so beautiful. The set design, all the wallpapers, all those sets, they are just candy, eye candy.
Yes.
Place has its own look. And Emma, we got a few views of Emma, and Harriet, where you see the beautiful, poofs and lace and different things on the hem, which are happening in the mid-teens. The bonnets are perfection, all the different woven straw, usually it's just, okay, it's straw. It's a straw bonnet, it's Regency-esque, but you look carefully at each bonnet has its own different kind of weave of straw. I don't know where they went for that, but it's magical and fabulous. You even have that one scene where she's chatting with Harriet about, whether she's going to accept the proposal and so on. And the scene they set it in is Emma is getting fitted by her mantua maker for a pelisse, and you see the lining and the stitching and the basting of the pelisse as she's getting it fitted, and then later you see her in it. I mean, it is a costume historian's fantasy. It's just sheer perfection. So I love that production just with a passion. And there's even the scene where she's a little cold and she's in her room and she pulls up her dress and you can see that she has no underpants on. And she's like warming her bare bum in front of the fire. And that is taken straight out of a caricature from the period. And of course we get, Johnny Flynn's bare bottom viewed as well. So, that's a bonus too. But that is possibly my favorite costume-wise of all of them, and I also love almost everything about the script and the whole production. And other than that, it would have to be probably 1995 Persuasion is another of my favorites for costume, and the whole look of it is very autumnal. And then there's, Anne develops over the course, her wardrobe and colors lighten up as her mood and her outlook on life lighten up. So there's character development shown through costume. It's really, really delightful.
So if anyone wanted to make their own DIY,
Mhm.
DIY their Regency attire, what
Which
would
we
you
saw
rec
a lot of at Jasna, I
Yeah,
have
we
to say. I
saw a
was
lot
very
of the
impressed.
Yes, people love dressing up at Jasna. Um, I have to say, I'm more in the world where I get exposure to the people who get really, really serious and geeky about this and really want to go for the really, really accurate. And I don't expect everybody to want to do that. So the knowledge I have of that is of a niche that not everyone is going to find useful or desirable. And again, I'm not here to be the costume police. If you just want to put on something, that's, you know, reasonably evocative of the Regency period and you feel pretty and fun in it, go for it. I am not here to say, "Oh my god, I do have one thing." Um, if you want, well, I'll get to that in a minute. So there are some perfectly decent patterns out there made by Butterick, McCalls, and Simplicity that are part of their, historic costuming things that are some Regency patterns. Some of them have been inspired by Bridgerton. Some of them are just sort of, Regency general. Really nothing wrong with them. They're pretty decent Regency costumes. And because they're made by the modern pattern companies, they're going to be made for people who, need to know how to sew in modern ways. Um, Now, if you want to get really, really into the weeds of, I really want the right look and I want to make a corset to get the right shape and I want the petticoat and I want the this and that, the two companies I recommend most highly are Past Patterns and Fig Leaf Patterns. Fig Leaf, actually, if you were at Jasna, you would have seen their booth. And Mackenzie, who is the owner of that and the pattern maker for that, has actually based a bunch of things on some of the DAR costumes, garments in our collection. So we have worked closely together. And she also she offers very, very detailed instructions. And also, she'll say, well, if you don't want to do it perfectly, exactly like the original, here's how you could do a little shortcut. But those Past Patterns and Fig Leaf aren't necessarily incredibly difficult, but they do assume a certain amount of knowledge. Both are run by women who are entrepreneurs who you can email and say, here's how good I am at this. Can you suggest, am I going to be able to do this without too much difficulty? So they will be very responsive. And if you want to say, I don't know if I can do this, what do you advise? And they might say, pick this one, not that one, that kind of thing. There's many, many other pattern companies. If you go to Etsy and say Regency dress pattern, there you will find many different things. I can't speak to the quality and ease and experience of those. So what I would do is refer you to a website of the Greater Bay Area Costumers Guild, gbacg.org. And they have a whole section on pattern reviews where these are, some serious costumers. A lot of people will take the tiny little 1/8 scale things that they find in books and they'll scale it up and figure out how to fit it to their exact body. And they'll even review those. But there will be many, many reviews of many, many different patterns. And they will say, I had a little trouble fitting this. So you're going to need this, or this runs small. So make sure you add a couple of extra inches before you fit it and blah, blah, blah. So they will be a good source of information for that, because you may find a look that you like from one of these other pattern companies, and I simply don't know whether to recommend them. So I'm going to stay far out of that. I'm going to refer you to the Greater Bay Area Costumer Guild's reviews. And I know there are a bunch of people who sell ready-made ones. Again, I don't know who to recommend. I don't know how much money you want to spend. I don't know how much you care about getting the fit and the look and the accuracy right. You're on your own. My one plea is, remember, this is a very high-waisted period. And remember, the waist goes under the boobs. I have seen far too many examples where people have the neckline, and then they have the waistline, and then they have their boobs. And you just got to yank those babies up to be over the waistline. I'm begging you.
Okay.
Okay.
Um,
And the hair must be up.
well, if you're just going to a Jane Austen thing, I don't care if your hair is up. That's none of my business how you want to wear your costume. If you're being someone at a historic house and you're trying to portray someone real and you're trying to really portray the period, or you're at a national park at some historic event and you're really trying to, portray the period, then yes, put your hair up, make an effort, make it look right. But if you're just dressing up for a Jane Austen thing, or a colonial tea for the 250th, do whatever you want. I'm not the costume police. Do as little or as much for accuracy as you feel like. If you're trying to truly teach about the period or portray the period in a movie or a TV show, that's when I start getting a little judgmental. A little.
And the main thing is to have fun with history.
The main thing is to have fun. I'm not going to sit here and judge you. I mean, I will, if you want me to comment on this is the way to, get it more accurate, I can give you that guidance. But if you just want to dress up for, one day for a Jane Austen birthday party, just do what you want. Just get the boobs over the waistline.
And on that note, thank you for joining us on Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters. It's great seeing you in person. It's great seeing you virtually on this
Great meeting
platform.
you in Baltimore. Great seeing you here at the exhibit a couple of months ago. And thank you so much for having me.
Because of you, I look much more closely at costumes now when I look at
See,
historical drama.
that's really my goal, is to educate your eye, to sort of, and really what you can have a lot of fun with, hopefully. We didn't get as much into that here as we do when I give my PowerPoint about historic dramas, but just realize that all of these things were choices that were made, and start saying, ooh, look at that. Like in Bridgerton, one family is always blue. So they identify with each other. Or sometimes, oh, you can tell these two people are meant to be together because they're both wearing green. I mean, it might be subtle, it might be more obvious. Or what's happening over the course of the time period? Is it just seasonal changes, or is this person changing what they're wearing because their attitude or character is changing? Or, what is this person's role in the family? Do they look significantly different because they're the misfit in that family? In a way, costume and also the production design in general, but costume especially, is a substitute for the narrator's voice. You may get a little bit of voiceover introducing some things in some of these period dramas, but these visuals of what they're wearing is telling you something about the character that if you were reading the book, they'd say, oh, Mrs. Elton was a really silly person and she's very vain and she just thinks so highly of herself and blah, blah, blah. And you get all of that from the extended dialogue and the narrator's introduction. But when you're the designer, you have to give her a goofy little 1830s hairdo, which is, again, 15 or 20 years out of date, but it works because it's trying to show who Mrs. Elton is. And she doesn't fit in visually because she's done this thing that is so silly and vain. So, why are they dressing that way? What is the designer trying to tell me by putting these people in these colors and these designs? And so hopefully by thinking about this, it's not just about, is it accurate or not? Is it effective, and what is it trying to tell me?
We hope you're enjoying our podcast miniseries, Jane Austen Adapted, for Jane Austen's 250th birthday anniversary. Go to our webpage at michonbostongroup.com/Boston Sisters, where you'll find part 1 of our conversation with Alden O'Brien and past Jane Austen and Regency-themed podcasts.
Subscribe to Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters so you won't miss our 3rd Jane Austen Adapted podcast, featuring historical fiction novelist Vanessa Riley, who is also the cultural and historical advisor to the 2024 Hallmark Channel's adaptation of Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility.
When you think of Sense and Sensibility, you have a man who has a second marriage. If someone is marrying, particularly, let's say she's from the islands, she is Caribbean mulatto, etc., she's going to be coming with money. Like, there might be the love, but let's get real, boys and girls. It's a money transaction, marriages during this time frame. So she's coming with money.
Thank you for catching this episode of Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters. We hope you enjoyed our exploration of captivating historical films and series dramas. Find us on Instagram at Historical Drama Sisters and on Facebook at Historical Drama Boston Sisters.
We want to hear from you. What historical dramas are you watching? Share your favorites. We may feature them in a future episode. Don't forget to subscribe. Visit our website at michonbostongroup.com/Boston Sisters and share the podcast with fellow historical drama enthusiasts.
Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters is brought to you by the Michon Boston Group. The views and opinions expressed on Historical Drama with the Boston Sisters are those of the speakers and do not represent the positions or views of the Michon Boston Group, its clients, or affiliates. This is Michon Boston.
And this is Taquiena Boston.
Thank you for listening.